So how can a no from God save the world? Hi, I'm Heather, and we are at the feet of Jesus, and we are going through the entire Bible, one book at a time, and we are in the book of Genesis. In fact, we are in chapters 36 and 37 this week. I want to tell you, first of all, we have 115 subscribers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Woohoo! I am so excited, and I have you all to thank. So thank you for telling people. Thank you for sharing this on social media. I really appreciate those of you who have done that and helped other people join us in studying the Bible in depth. I have a couple shout outs this week. I have a shout out from a friend of mine who is on a Facebook, Christian YouTubers support group on Facebook. And she suggested I work on getting these YouTube videos down to 15 minutes. I have tried to put together a slightly new format so that we can do that, and I'm going to explain it in just a second. I would love your feedback on it. And then the other is Jesse Gonzalez, who is going to help me make my social media more polished and professional looking. So thank you. He set me up with microphones today that we're not using, but microphones today, and we will be using them soon when I know what I'm doing with them. So thank you, Jesse, and thank you, my friend from the Facebook group. So the new format is actually pretty simple. In the workbook, we are still going through 2 chapters, most of the time 2 chapters a week. We are still studying it exactly the same way as we have. The only difference is instead of doing an entire synopsis of both chapters, through praying and through guidance with the Holy Spirit, I have picked out one story in the 2 chapters to really go in depth with. And so I have done that for this week in hopes that we shorten the video time a little bit so that people don't have to invest so much time to go through the Bible with us. So here we go. Chapter 36 this week really highlights Esau and his family. Chapter 37 introduces us to Joseph, where we will stay with throughout the end of Genesis, and then right before we get to our next book of the Old Testament. So let's get with our book and with the part that we're going to read. I'm going to read it to you, giving you a few little snippets of highlight, and then I will point out some things after that I want you to see. So we are in Genesis 37, verses 16 through 29. You ready? All righty. So he said, I am seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they are feeding their flock. And the man said, they have departed from here. Here is Shechem, by the way. For I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. And by the way, Dothan is the home of Elisha. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. Now, when they saw him afar off, when his brothers saw Joseph afar off, even before he came near, they conspired against him to kill him. So I really want you to think through this. They saw him from way far away, and they started conspiring and coming up with plans on how to kill him. Then they said to one another, look, this dreamer is coming. Dreamer can actually mean master of dreams. They were not being nice and friendly. They were being highly sarcastic, and it wasn't a pleasant thing. So verse 20, come therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit. Now, a pit that they were talking about was a dried well. It was the time of year that it would have been dried. There could have been scorpions and snakes down in the pit. And we shall say some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams. So verse 21, but Reuben heard it. And what that means, I want you to think of this. It means Reuben overheard it. It means Reuben wasn't sitting around with them. So Reuben heard what they were talking about. And he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. Remember, Reuben is the oldest brother. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit, which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him. Then there's a dash, and it says that he might deliver him out of their hands and bring him back to his father. Don't let that confuse you. He's saying, Reuben says, let's just put him in this pit. Now that might sound like Reuben's not being his friend, but it was Reuben's idea that he would sneak away. We actually see him sneak away, and he would get him out of the pit and deliver him back to his father. So he's not having any of this, we're going to hurt our little brother business. He's trying really to help him. So it came to pass when Joseph had come to his brothers, and they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him. I really have read in many different commentaries and different synopses of this that they did more than strip him of his coat. They most likely stripped him either naked or nearly naked. Then they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal. How callous can you be that you would do this and then sit down and eat a meal? I am absolutely sure Joseph wasn't just sitting in the pit waiting for his brother's practical joke to be over. He was probably hollering. He was pleading. We know for a fact he was pleading because of Genesis 42:21. Let's go real quick to Genesis 42:21. And you can hear what Joseph was saying while they were eating dinner. He was saying, then they said to one another, this is later on, obviously, and they're talking about how they mistreated Joseph. Then they said to one another, we are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore, this distress has come upon us. So, anguish of his soul. Think about that. And they sat down and were having dinner. Then they lifted their eyes and looked, and there was a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing spices, balm, and myrrh on their way to carry them down to Egypt. These were things that were used a lot of time to embalm bodies. So Judah said to his brothers, what profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Let not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. As if he's being a really good guy, right? He's saying, we're not going to kill him. Let's be better than that. Let's sell him into slavery. And his brothers listened. So verse 28. Then the Midianite traders passed by. So the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. That was around $20. Amos 8:6 explains that they each got 2 shekels, and they most likely bought shoes with them. There were 10 of them that did it. Reuben was not part of that. Verse 29, then Reuben returned to the pit. So Reuben wasn't there when they divided up the money from the Ishmaelites. He had most likely gone on top of a hill to overlook the situation so that he could go get Joseph out of the pit. Remember, that was his plan? So then Reuben returned to the pit, and indeed Joseph was not in the pit, and he tore his clothes. I'll read on to verse 30. And he returned to his brothers and said, the lad is no more, and where shall I go? So that is just some interesting information. I want to point out some things with this information, with this part of our story of Genesis. First of all, Joseph was a type of Jesus. And so there's just a lot of things that we can see that are similar between Joseph and Jesus. What are those things? Both of them were very much loved sons of their father. They were both hated by a wicked world, and there were schemes laid against both of them. So God had a purpose in the trouble, though, for both, right? So was Jesus a Christophany? That's a fancy word for, was he a type of Christ? Was he a Christ that actually personified in the Old Testament? No. Joseph was his own person, but he was a type of Christ, so there are some similarities. And God did, obviously, we know that God had a giant purpose. I mean, the entire Bible is the story of the purpose of Jesus. But also there was a purpose behind Joseph. Joseph saved Israel because of what he did. So if we go to verse 17, that was when he saw the man in Shechem, and he said, "Where are my brothers?" And the man said, "Remember, I think they've gone to Dothan." That was an interesting little piece, because his father said, "Go and find the boys in Shechem and check on them." He could have easily gone back to his father and said, "Dad, they're not in Shechem. I went." So he would have obeyed his father, but he went the extra mile, literally, to go find his brothers. We think it's somewhere between 4 and 8 miles. He went a long way away to go find his brothers and to further obey his father. So it may have been that he exceptionally loved his father and wanted to obey him. It could have been that he was looking forward to seeing his brothers. And then what a shock that would have been for his brothers to have done that. You know, they tease him for his dreams in verse 19, master of dreams. But it was those dreams, it was Joseph dreaming that saved their life. That's just a kind of a crazy thing, don't you think? So then we have verse 28. There were 2 routes that these Midianites, the Ishmaelites, could have gone to get to Egypt. There was one that was by land, and that would have gone right by Jacob. That would have gone right by his father. And don't you know, Joseph would have been screaming and hollering, and Joseph would have heard him. And then the other was by sea. And, you know, in God's providence, they went by sea. In God's providence, they went by sea and avoided Jacob altogether. And as we know, and we will study in more in detail in coming weeks, Joseph gets to Egypt and he becomes a slave. So let's go to the workbook real quick. Here we go. The workbook available on Amazon for $9.95, super cheap. So what are the main themes? I really thought about this, and I wanted to think of both chapters. I really think the theme for me this week was when no is good. You know, it goes back to, well, it goes back quite a ways when we have been discussing all the times when God said no, and it turned out to be a wonderful thing. But we have Esau in chapter 36 and the story of his family and how much family he had and how wealthy he had. Remember, it wasn't too many chapters ago when Esau was tricked out of his birthright and his blessing. But that no didn't mean that he didn't have blessing and didn't have a lot of wealth and a lot of family. And then we have Joseph sold by his brothers. That was a big, no, I'm not going to save you, Joseph. I'm going to have you do this. And that was big. That saved Israel. It saved his brothers, but it saved all of Israel because of the drought. And we will study this in detail. And then the dreams that caused the brothers to be mad actually saved them. So when no is a good thing, you know, I've gone through no's being good things. Have you? Whew. So that leads us to our theological implication this week. I just had it on my heart that the theological implication this week was Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall make your path straight. Ooh, I need that every once in a while. I need to know that I need to trust his understanding far greater than mine, because I want things healed and I want things done and I want things over and I want trauma handled and I don't want to experience it. But just like with Joseph, God sometimes has a greater, bigger, giant purpose behind what we would consider as suffering. So my application for that was trust and acknowledge. So I think I'm going to stop there this week, and we are going to, what are we going to put at the feet of Jesus this week? I would love to know what you are putting at Jesus's feet this week. If you have something that you are putting at Jesus's feet this week, tell me. I'd really like to pray for you. And please tell me what you think of the shorter synopsis so that we're stopping right around 15 minutes and you can go on with your day. So at the feet of Jesus today, we are going to trust in his no. I need that. I need to trust his no. I need to trust that my God is a sovereign God and he knows what's good, what's just good to have happen. So friends, I love you. I would love to pray for you. I would love to be honored to pray for you. So I love you, friends. I'm praying for you. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And God's got this.